Okay, John Butler here on Media Row at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. It is winding up today. Tonight's the big night with Kamala Harris being coronated, right?
Yeah.
So my special guest is Ron Nirenberg, and he is the mayor of San Antonio. Welcome.
Great to be with you, John.
You got a big city to manage.
Big city, seventh most populous in the nation. Folks don't realize that. It's also a very big city, sprawling over about 500 square miles. The MSA is in the entirety of Bexar County, which is about 1,500 square miles.
Wow.
But big city challenges.
You know, I didn't realize it was that big.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
wow. Well, it kind of almost runs together with Austin now.
Almost, not quite. We've got some work to do for ease of transportation and things like that, but the economies are very complementary. And yeah, if you drive up and down 35, you have noticed the congestion. You've also noticed that there's not a whole lot of space between the cities anymore.
Yeah. And there is a lot of congestion. I do drive that frequently.
Yeah.
So, but a great city, great food.
Yeah. Yep.
Great river.
That's right. Thank you very much for that. We have the Riverwalk. We also are home of the Alamo, the cradle of Texas liberty.
Yeah.
The only World Heritage Site in the state of Texas, but really a place of history and culture that is unreplicable, not only in Texas but across the country. Very important places in the history of our country are located in San Antonio.
Yeah, you know, that's true. And a little bit of trivia. So this is eons ago, but I once rode a bike starting at the Alamo, and the mayor at the time shot the gun. You know, where we started. I raced two other disc jockeys. I was representing KLIF as a disc jockey back then. It was the number one station in Dallas, number one station in San Antonio, KTSA at the time.
Yep.
The disc jockey from there, and then a disc jockey from Houston, KILT in Houston. And we started at the Alamo on bicycles, raced to downtown Dallas, to the Cliff Studios, and then raced to Houston.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, Park. So
that's quite a ways.
I found out Texas isn't flat. So anyway, when I see the Alamo, I always think of that because it was a big deal. And of course, you're an old radio guy too.
In some respects, maybe so. In terms of my mayoral tenure, yes. I am only 47 years old, so I don't feel like I'm old yet. But
you were in radio.
I have been in radio as a
college campus there.
Yeah, I was general manager of KRTU, 91.7 FM, the best jazz radio station in the universe.
Yeah.
Was also teaching classes as part of that at Trinity University for about 4 years before I got into politics. But prior to that, I was at the Nirenberg Public Policy Center for about 9 years, working across the country on municipal policy issues. Civic engagement brought me to 22 different cities across the country about, really teaching people how local government works and why local government is the place where we solve America's problems.
Yeah, and you call yourself an independent.
Yeah, well, I'm a Democrat. I am the secretary of the Democratic Mayors Association. I have never run for a partisan office, though.
Okay.
In local offices in Texas, most cities run on a nonpartisan ballot. And the truth of the matter is, 99% of what local government leaders have to do is focus on and solve common sense problems. Paving streets, keeping our neighborhoods safe, dealing with amenities and building up the quality of life, things like that, which really shouldn't be partisan at the end of the day.
Yeah. And you've got some major issues you're dealing with, I guess, like every major city.
Yeah.
Crime is on the top of everybody's mind in a major city.
Crime is always on the minds of folks, and we've had our challenges with crime across the country over the last decade, but crime is at historic lows, believe it or not. And in fact, what we've seen in most major cities now since 2021 is a decrease in crime, violent crime rates, most Category 1 crimes, which is robbery, assaults, things of that nature, and property crimes are also starting to come down. There's been an epidemic of car burglaries. Not only in the state of Texas but across the country. Those are starting to come down. But an interesting fact about one of the reasons why, or one of the features of the car thefts that we had seen in cities, is that many cars are being broken into, and I would say maybe a significant number of the car burglaries are happening for the purpose of taking unsecured weapons out of the car. That's disturbing, but we are getting a grip on the issue, and crime has declined significantly over the last few years.
So do they break in to see if there's a weapon there, or is...
Well, most car burglaries, car thefts, or burglaries of vehicles occur when a car door or window is left open. And so usually it's a crime of opportunity.
Yeah.
But, especially in areas where there's a large number of guns being carried in automobiles, what we're finding is that those guns are being stolen out of vehicles and presumably being used to perpetrate crimes.
Okay. I was not aware of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how about just violent crime, the shootings? I know, of course, you're in Chicago with shootings every weekend.
Yeah.
About 7 people killed this past weekend.
No, there's never... so any victim of a crime, one crime, violent crime, is too many.
Yeah.
Statistically, though, if we're talking about perception versus what's actually happening in the streets, crime in San Antonio is down year over year 17%. Violent crime, it was down last year more than that, almost double that. So crime is on a precipitous decline. Crimes per capita are also at a historic low. I mean, if you look at the violent crime rate in San Antonio or most major cities today versus what was happening in the 90s, for instance, fractions of what was happening earlier on. So there is a perception challenge with crime. There is no doubt crime happening, but we are deploying resources and looking at crime holistically to really bring these numbers down, which has been a successful effort in most parts, including San Antonio.
Yeah. What are the other major issues that you're dealing with besides crime in San Antonio?
One of the, so probably the biggest issue that we are dealing with is economic mobility. And what do I mean by that? Being able to afford the house you live in, the availability of housing, making sure that people have the education and credentials necessary to take the jobs that we're creating. Those things go hand in hand. Housing is a big issue in local communities. We don't have enough affordable housing. And I tell my peers, we're never going to solve the affordable housing crisis simply by building more housing. We do need to build more housing. We need to build affordable housing. We need to cut the costs of supplies and the process, reduce red tape. But we also need to make sure that people have the wages to afford the things that are being built in our communities.
Yeah.
And the fact is, wages have not risen in our communities, in our country, as fast as cost of living and the cost of housing has been for generations.
Yeah, well, with inflation, I mean, just go out to eat. It's expensive, Just to get a hamburger is expensive.
Yeah, and
people are feeling that. They go to the
they
grocery
absolutely
store,
are.
they go to the gas station.
Absolutely are. The cost to do anything has increased pretty dramatically over the last few years. Some of it fueled by the supply chain crises that we've seen. Some of it fueled by the trade wars and the actual real wars that have been happening across. So inflation is a function of a global economic environment, some of which we can facilitate solutions.
Yeah.
What I will tell you, though, again, if you look at longitudinally what's happening in our country that is really of a concern to most American families is that wages, salaries, your take-home pay has not risen as fast as the cost of living, which most of cost of living, or a big part of it, 30% to 50% of your cost of living is the cost of the home you live in. And so if that is not structurally balanced, you're going to continue to feel the crunch in your pocketbook.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so what about the homeless situation in San Antonio? Yeah. People on the street.
So homelessness in San Antonio is an area of very big focus for us. 2006, we created an effort by the former CEO of Diamond Shamrock, then Valero, Bill Greehey, got together with the former mayor, Phil Hardberger, and created what is called Haven for Hope. It's the center of gravity for a homeless response system. Since that time, homelessness has decreased dramatically in San Antonio. And as we've seen in terms of our point-in-time count, which is an annual census that we do with homelessness, what we've seen over the last probably 6-7 years is that the population of homelessness of homeless individuals has remained steady. But homeless individuals, there's different categories. Some are unsheltered. Those are the folks that you see on the street. And what we need to do to solve that crisis is to make sure that we have services available. Because folks who are out on the street, homelessness is not usually the cause of something. It's usually a symptom of other causes. So we have to address what those causes are and get them in shelter. So part of that is we've got to build housing that is available for folks who have those kinds of issues, so we can get them off the street while they also get restitution, while they get rehabilitation. To get them off the street, though, requires us to build those kinds of shelters.
Yeah. It's a difficult challenge because, and I've done a number of stories on this, talked to the homeless people, done stories with the professionals to deal with them. And the professionals tell me, it's not, we're excited if somebody wants to come off the street. It's usually drug addiction, other issues, mental illness, and that cause them to want to be on the street. Said, we have places for them if they want to come off the street. And that was in Seattle, Toronto, did a story there, Salt Lake City. And so, it's not just building the houses, it's getting them to want to come off the street.
Yeah, but everyone's story is different. The challenge for many homeless individuals is that to qualify for some of those shelters, you have to be clean and sober. You can't have a drug addiction, for instance, or dependency in order to qualify for some of those housing. So there has been an effort to create housing in which we have the rehabilitative services located on site, so someone can get back on their feet, get the rehabilitation while they also have a safe roof over their heads. Because one of the things that invariably happens to individuals who are homeless is they end up getting exposed to drugs. They get exposed to mental health issues. And so the crises get worse, not better. And so we can't just wait for somebody to get better before they get into a house. We just feed the cycle. So we built more of those housing. We've seen actually, and this is what I was going to say earlier, the number of people who are unsheltered on our streets has actually gone down.
Wow.
But one of the challenges
that's a big accomplishment.
Thank you. In a big city, it's tough, and I would say that in San Antonio, we are showing a model of how big cities can deal with the homeless crisis. But one of the areas where we're seeing more challenging, more people becoming homeless is for reasons of economic insecurity, meaning that they're having to work 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet. They can't afford their rent, so if one of those jobs goes away, they end up on the street. Those are the individuals who are very susceptible to additional traumas that will leave them on the street if we don't take care of those other services.
Okay, before we wind up, I want to ask you about the border and how it's impacting San Antonio in your job.
Well, we've had prior to so before the executive orders that President Biden issued, we were seeing a surge. Unfortunately, because of the bipartisan border security bill that was dismissed and not taken up for a vote, the president had to execute these orders in order to lower the number of border crossings.
And
been since
in the last few weeks.
About 2 months ago. So since then, the border crossings have decreased more than 50%.
Okay, but the thousands of people coming across the border for the past years. How has that affected you? I mean, it's got to affect you in some way. I mean, it's affecting people in Chicago here.
Well, so how it affects us is that we have migrants coming over who are waiting for their asylum hearings, who have to wait for the asylum hearings because there's not enough resources to have the hearings in time. So they're here for years in some cases, who are not allowed to work because that's what the law says, and they have to wait for their hearings because there's not enough judges to hear the cases. So that's why the legislative issues are so important.
Is it costing the city money?
No, it's not. So FEMA, through the Shelter and Services Program, is able to reimburse us for any of the expenses.
So you get the federal funds.
So in terms of how it affects the average citizen, it doesn't. It becomes a political talking point. But what I will tell you is that without legislative solutions to increase the resources on the border for security, to increase the number of judges for adjudication, to help with the process and policies related to access to work,
Yeah.
this process is going to continue. President Biden put in the executive orders to deal with that the best he can, but ultimately Congress has to act. And if it's going to be a political, football, and nobody
Yeah.
wants to stand up and actually take action legislatively through Congress, we're going to see this happen over and over again, and the president will ultimately have to continue to issue executive orders, which we hope will stick, but they're always under threat of legal action.
So what else do you want people to know about San Antonio?
It's a great city. It's one of the fastest.
It is a great city.
It's one of the fastest growing cities in the country.
Really?
Yes. In fact, last year we were the fastest growing city in the country, and folks in my community say, well, we have enough people. We don't need any more. And I tell them, well, the reason why they're coming is for the same reason why you're staying. It's a great city.
Yeah.
We're rebuilding our airport. We're busting at the seams in terms of air service capacity, so we're finally underway with a massive airport renovation. We also have public transportation under development.
Yeah.
And, it's an exciting time to be in San Antonio. It continues to grow and improve in every way. Just learned today that UTSA and UT Health are merging. They're building a major urban downtown campus, and UTSA football is about to take the field, and they're doing great.
Well, that's going to be tremendous for you. So, well, good luck to you.
Thank you very much, John.
Appreciate you taking time to stop by and talk. And
thank you.
And it's a tough job. Tough job being mayor of any big city today.
It is, but we do it because we love it, and we are proud to serve our constituents.
Hey, good luck to you. Thanks
so much, John.
Appreciate it.